Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Wherever you are watching this from, Sean Maloney, Digital Business Masters with Karatbars. Okay, this video, just going to go back to a couple of points that we've been expounding in this project now for many, many years. It's a very important principle to understand if you are going to get involved with, let's say, plowing your own furrow and pushing yourself to a place where you take fiscal responsibility in your life. Okay, many of you understand we talk regularly about Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. We talk regularly about Lynette Zhang. We talk regularly about Robert Kiyosaki, the cash flow quadrant, etc., etc., etc. And if you're new to this project, you really should be putting yourself in front of that information, because it will basically set your path on the expectation and mindset and everything else you need to understand if you're going to make a success of creating your own financial destiny. Okay, now it's so important, because if you don't have that financial knowledge and awareness and opinion, I mean, you don't have to believe any of this, it's your decision, but at the end of the day, education is the creator of awareness, and to make sure that you're continually ahead of what this project is about. And we're talking specifically about Karatbars here, because at the end of the day, Karatbars is a vehicle. Okay, it's a vehicle on which we're able to take a position, we're able to leverage, and then we're able to create financial choice. It's as simple as that. Okay, people overthink it, people get lost in the weeds, people get in all sorts of tangles in the near term. They get completely lost in the detail, because often they don't understand the bigger picture. They're doing it because they might need some extra income today, now, this month, or this year. You know, they're wanting to get ahead of income, and that's because they're chasing income. Okay, now that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with working hard and chasing income. But one thing you have to understand, and one thing that will help you to understand when you're getting buffeted and things aren't quite moving in the direction you want, is always go back to the bigger reason. And that's why you need to start with education. Okay, so this website here is quite interesting. It's called What WTF Happened in 1971. Okay, and hopefully many of you are aware of what happened in 1971, but if you're not, this might help. But lots of things have happened since 1971, and it isn't an accident. Okay, so the reason that a lot of us are in a situation where we may want to accumulate more income every month, in other words, we've got into a situation in life where we've got consistent situations of more month than income. The reason that happens is maybe bigger than you currently understand. Because when you put energy down, what you're basically doing is you're going into a work environment. That's what most people understand as the way to create income. That's why 95% of people reside on the employment quadrant, if you understand the cash flow quadrant. It's because we're all taught, rightly or wrongly, it doesn't really matter, to create ourselves into a situation of skill, well, health, first of all, skill, resourcefulness, ability, strength, to go out there and contribute to the economy. And that manifests itself normally in us working for other people, and that's why it's called being employed. Now, that's fine, but the employment infrastructure is driven inside the economy, that's in self-driven by something that's called the fiat economy. Okay, and the fiat economy has only been around since 1971, the full fiat economy. Fiat's been around for a while, and we've not been on a full gold standard for over 100 years. But the fact of a full fiat now becoming relevant since 1971 is when you start to see disparity, as you can see on this chart. Okay, so you don't need to be an economics expert to understand that when you start seeing productivity rising at a higher rate than the compensation relative to that productivity, then you're always going to get a situation where the real term wages are not in a position whereby they can keep up with let's call it real inflation. And that's just maths, okay? So that's what this chart is showing us. It's the chart that will absolutely confirm to you in your life, once you understand it, why you're probably turning to online, for example, to make more money online. It's why you've got 2 jobs. It's why 2 people in your family possibly are going to work. It's why you have a consistent situation over 1 month of money. It's why you have increasing debt, not just in families, but also generally across nations. It's why governments are increasingly in debt, because they're leveraging against the fiat system to fund projects and fund social infrastructure. And they're doing that by borrowing up against bonds. That's what that's what the system does. It's what it's always done since 1971. So it becomes normalized very, very quickly. And then what happens as a result of that, more currency is in the system, which is what this chart's showing you basically. And that creates a situation where the currency itself falls in purchasing power. It's that is the core reason why you may have more month of money. It's not the fact that you can't make enough money. You can always make money. But what you've got to do is understand how to protect what you've got as well. And that's the big take home that people have to understand. And once you understand that, you're able to go and do something about it. Okay? And all Karatbars is, at its core, is a defense mechanism against that situation. And it does it by, well, the only way you can do it as a normal individual is to go and create assets in your life that are immune from that phenomenon. In other words, immune from inflation. And that's what gold is. So to own physical gold, not ETFs, not contracts, not derivative-based stock, you need to own the physical gold, and you need to know that it's 999 bank-grade bullion gold, by the way, not just any old gold. So that's the very first premise. So for you to be educated and understand that point is a huge advantage to you as we go through the process of not only helping people own gold, but probably equally, if not more importantly, giving people an ability to transact in gold-based ecosystems. So the title of this live today is, how close are you to the printer? Okay. Now, what that basically means is, if you have a good credit score, you're closer to the printer. If you have a medium to poor credit score, you're further away from the printer in fiat. Okay, so banks and governments, for example, decide for themselves that they're close to the printer. In fact, they are closest. So they're able to get hold of very, very cost-effective channels of money, channels of currency. They get the first bite, if you will. Okay, so when the governments decree and the central banks decree that they're going to work together to what they call it, sending the helicopters in. So what they'll do, they'll send the helicopters in, they'll dump currency in the markets by things like quantitative easing, for example. And the minute they do that, the bond markets, the governments, the banks themselves take the first bite of the gain. Then it cascades down into the wealthiest, which are normally the big stock owners and the big companies, etc. And then it filters down to those with the highest credit scores, etc., inside the markets, the loan markets, etc. And then eventually it filters what's left right down to the bottom, where people don't have good credit scores in that simple sense, and therefore pay the most. Okay, so as ever, the people at the bottom pay the most. It's a fact of life. Okay, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. What I'm saying is that's the nature of it. Human society is built on the strongest. So those who work hardest and ensure that they have the education to get themselves into the places of being closest to the printer, they take the gain. Okay, you can decide what you believe in that. I'm not trying to say This isn't a socialist call. This is about talking about the facts of life, okay? So it's about being smart and understanding how you play in the system, okay? Now, the problem with that, and that very black and white, hard-edged statement, is that the vast majority of people are taught not to be smart. They're taught to be in the system, and that's the point. The fiat system exists as a debt-based system because the majority of people are not close to the money, not close to the printer. That's the reason it exists. That's the reason it persists. This red line here is that in action. You're purposely kept to a place of sustenance so that you have to leverage the products of the fiat system, which manifest in credit cards and debt and loan accounts and student loans and car loans and mortgages. And that's the point. They are products of the fiat system that keep everybody paying into the system to keep the system alive. And when it gets to a nudge, which is going to be very interesting what happens over the next few years, because 2008 officially was the end of that cycle. And they've kept it going because of increasing amounts of currency being dropped into communities. And the top 5%, of course, have taken full advantage of that. And hence you've got the wealth gap. But for everybody else, this productivity line will continue to drive. But this line will stagnate and flatline, which it has done since 1971. It has to. So the question for you is, do you want to maintain your position on this red line? Or do you want to do something about it? As I've already said, you can do something about it yourself if you're smart and understand how to leverage the fiat system. A lot of people, what you've got to understand is fiat is a token. It's a token of exchange. It's not money. So to hold fiat, i.e. a savings account or a pension even, is not good enough because you've got to move fiat to make it work. So you've got to put fiat into something that creates cash flow. It's got to create fiat back to you. It's got to reflect fiat back. Okay. Now that's a complete anathema for most, because what they're taught to do is go and exchange time for fiat and spend fiat and hold on to as much fiat as they can for future. But the big problem is that fiat is losing in its purchasing power faster than you can earn it in many cases these days, and certainly faster than it will accrue interest in any savings. And if you're looking at a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 year rolled out with regards to a pension, for example, then every day goes by, that pension is worth less, no matter how much more you put in, unless you completely stall your life and don't go on holiday and live frugally for 20 years. But who wants to do that? So this is the issue. Now you've got two choices to make. You can either, three choices. You can stay where you are and hope for the best, which is what most people do. They bury their heads. You can understand the fiat system and go and play the game, yeah, which means getting hold of fiat to a significant enough degree to go and make that fiat go to work for you. So a simple example, the one I always use, is what we've played for years, is using other people's money in order to create assets and then having other people pay down the lending, and the excess is what we live our life on. That they're basically called tenants in properties. Okay, so that's one way, one very simple way of doing it in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, big businesses, running big businesses, everything else is the big way of doing it, but that's not in everyone's grasp. Not even property management is in everyone's grasp. So what's interesting these days is you are able to access this information, which is what this video is about, to understand this premise and then go away and leverage similar situations that allow you in small steps to accrue an asset base without having to go to all the stress and aggravation. And it is difficult, obviously, to leverage other people's money to build cash flow creating assets. It's not for everybody. But what everybody can do is connect to communities and connect to infrastructures, and we use Karatbars as our preferred go-to, to help people, not just people, but every person, if they choose to be educated, to go away and understand. One, to leverage fiat into a form that protects your purchasing power, but most importantly, to not play the game in fiat and ordain yourself as close to the printer by using assets you own inside a non-fiat exchange system. Okay, so that's a completely new, very modern, very untested still method of people maneuvering themselves as individuals in a decentralized form away from this chart. And that first came to the world only in 2009, 2010. So this century. And it manifested itself in something called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a direct result of this chart. It came about directly because of this chart. Its purpose was to use blockchain technology, which has been around for a long time, but to then create onto the blockchain technology a means of exchange. That basically is what Bitcoin is trying to do. And so, like I say, that's the third option. You've got three things. You can stay as you are and hope for the best. You can get involved with the fiat system and play the game, which is doable, but not easy. Or you can move yourself to a place whereby you are taking control through the ownership of real money, which is gold, which is the first premise, and then leveraging asset acquisition. That means you are close to the printer, or even you are the printer. In other words, you start to ordain yourself as your own bank. Okay, so for those, I'm launching this on 2113, but wherever you're listening to this, the advocacy is all about finding platforms and projects that, first of all, have that first premise of giving you access to real money, and then being able to enhance that position by taking yourself into a position whereby you own blockchain-based assets that mean you create your own bank. Okay, is that easy? Definitely not. Is it something for everybody? Of course it's not. Is it doable and being understood by more and more people every single month? Absolutely. Is the company, I'm talking about Karatbars, moving itself as best it can into a place where it gives people access to move away from that red line? Absolutely. Will it happen overnight? No, it won't. Is it a get rich quick? Definitely not. If you're listening to this and you're pissed off because you're not feeling like you're getting rich quick, then go back to the day job, because you just don't understand. If you want to make sure that you're taking yourself away from 100% reliant on bosses, banks, and governments, and that red line, you better make sure that you understand the premise of what happened in 1971 and build from there. Like I say, you can go and build on the fiat system, no problem. But there's a reason that only 5% of the world's populations are successful in that. For the rest of us, we have to educate ourselves to, first of all, create a foundation that we own, which is what gold is, and then leverage that into other sources, because we're not going to get it from the central systems. I mean, these charts just break your heart. 1971, a complete disparity. Yeah, this is, this is a great website. It's called WTF happened in 1971.com, believe it or not. But if you are still struggling to understand why you're not able to command enough living wage to live the life you thought you were going to live, then you need to understand these charts. Yeah, it's absolutely shocking in terms of how people have been fed into a system that is designed to keep them in a place where they keep the system stood up. Should be the other way around. Of course, you've got to work hard. Of course, you've got to put yourself in front of the queue. Of course, it's a dog eat dog. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be the case that you spend the whole of your life waiting for something and hoping for something. At some point, you've got to get up and do something. So I'll study this chart. I could spend hours talking about this chart, but look at this. Consumer Price Index, 1971. It's utterly ridiculous. And that's the stated CPI. Yeah. Federal Reserve numbers, suspension of the gold standard, all the indicators. This is going back hundreds of years. If you track this line back hundreds and hundreds of years, it's flat, flat, flat. It hardly does anything for hundreds of years. And then 1971, everything changes. 2008, it starts to go even worse. Okay. So I'm not going to go through it all, but at the end of the day, these are all indicators that just time and time and time again, all since Bretton Woods, all the same. Yeah, they tried to hold a half fiat standard, gold standard. Federal Reserve came about in this time. There's good reasons why the Federal Reserve had to be born from prior years, but the conspiracists will tell you that it was all manipulated to create this. So they tried to hold it. They did what they had to do, but the two world wars scuppered it completely because America just could not possibly hold the gold to run the economy. The Europeans wanted the gold back. So they had to launch the dollar as the global standard, and that's when all hell broke loose. But you know, it's death by 1,000 cuts, guys. Okay, so look at this to your heart's content. This is the background you need. You don't need to be an economics expert. You just need to go into the detail. Listen to people like Lynette Zhang. Listen to people like Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to people like Jim Rickards. They're all gold bugs. All right, but the reason that they're gold bugs is because they understand gold is just the first premise. You know, I don't agree with everything the gold bugs say. You know, gold is fine. It's obviously something you need as a foundation, but it's something that you're still in the hands of the global economy. If you're just on gold, you've got to have it. Don't get me wrong. You need it as a premise. But if you're just relying on gold, you're still waiting. Okay, so you hear me talk on the strategy calls that you're welcome to attend if you're not already doing so. Whereby if you're gonna own a business, you need to own ideally the land, the floor, the walls, the roof, the factory. In a simple sense, you need to own. Ideally, that's what you do. The vast majority of businesses, I look at the McDonald's model. They don't make the money from burgers. They make the money from owning the real estate that the burgers are made in. That's what most businesses have. Most businesses in you know, non-financial services businesses, they make their money from the real estate they own, mainly on the balance sheet. But they fund everything and they create all the goodwill in their business by what they put into that business. So in the case of a factory, again, you put machines in. And if the machines are sat in a factory, it doesn't matter how much you are proud of your factory and how many machines you've got in it. If you don't turn the machines on and you only own the land and the building, you're waiting for the land and the building to appreciate. That's like gold. It's great to have. It's essential to have. You can leverage it. You can do things with it. It will always appreciate generally over time. That's the point of it because of the falling value of fiat. That's why property increases. So if you own the land and the buildings, the factory, in other words, that's like gold. But if you don't have the machines inside it that give the factory life and energy and turnover and cash flow, if you don't turn those machines on, then you don't really have a company, you don't have a business. You just have a piece of real estate you're hoping to appreciate. So in Karatbars, we put machines in the factory and they manifest themselves into something called income producing assets. Okay, so let me segue into that because this is information you need. If you're moaning and groaning about Karatbars right now, whatever else you're moaning about, then go back and look at your history, look at your monetary history, look at the reason you're here, understand what it is. And if you see this and you still don't believe what Karatbars is trying to do, then just leave. But If you understand this and then understand what Karatbars is trying to do from its core, on the premise of putting gold in people's hands, then you'll understand what it is to get into a position where you're being paid in assets for life. And it should be for in inverted commas, as in getting paid for life. If you've understood everything I've been saying for the past few minutes, you'll understand what it is to own the gold, okay, which is what this is here, leverage cash flow and Bitcoin payments in it as a result of your efforts, and then leverage in. You've got to be leveraged. It's like, that's what owning the machines are. When you run a factory, just to use that analogy again, you don't just have one machine at the beginning and that machine does everything. You have several machines that all combined create the finished product. So you've got to look at your asset ownership in the same way, insofar as you're protecting all your machines inside a factory you own, including the land. That's always going to be something that resides in your balance sheet. But inside the factory, you've got a multitude of different things that are allowing you to do different things for your customers. The customer in this case being you yourself. You want that to be out there producing every single day to create income in your life. So to segue it back to the premise of this call, how close are you to the printer? Like I said, 3 options. Stay as you are and hope for the best. Number 2, stay in the FIAT system and leverage yourself so that you are closest to the printer, which basically means improving your credit score. Then you're able to go out there and leverage other people's fiat to create cash flow in the FIAT system. And I'm an advocate of that. Don't get me wrong, I've done that for years. It's an obvious thing to do. Just go and read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You don't earn money and then spend it and then save a bit away and hope that'll keep you moving forward. It's impossible in the FIAT system. You've got to get the money, then go and make the money go to work for you and create cash flow and velocity inside your own asset base. That's perfectly doable inside the FIAT system. But it's becoming increasingly difficult and it's increasingly insecure even for the biggest companies on the planet. In fact, I go as far as to say even for the biggest banks on the planet. Why do you think central banks are stacking gold right now? Because they're realizing not even they can keep up with it. So they're your 2 first options. The third option is to get involved with an ecosystem that gives you the floor, gives you the building, gives you the factory, in other words, gold, and then you put inside that asset diversification that you own. Now in Karatbars, asset diversification manifests itself in so many ways. And increasingly more ways now we've got access to exclusive points. Frankly, there's many of you listening to this call right now who are involved in Karatbars and you own gold, fantastic. You also own a lot of KBC, equally fantastic. But you've only got access there to 2 of the many diversified access to machinery in your factory that you can possibly have. You've got all your eggs in one side of the basket, which is fine. Okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But why would you only diversify 2? One which is gold, which is going to move as that's the oil tanker. Gold moves when it moves. It's a great security hedge, don't get me wrong. But if you're looking to leverage it to create cash flow, then you're going to be in for a long wait. It's the reason KBC exists, because it's much faster. And if we all get off our backsides and start to get the ecosystem adopted instead of moaning about it, then you'll find that KBC creates demand of its own volition. But even then, why would you only hold those 2 when you've got access to so many other options inside this ecosystem? And this is just if you're operating as a customer inside this ecosystem. Why would you sit there and wait? Why don't you leverage what you've got into things that can create you more diversification, more machines in your factory, more options for your future, more choices, more chances of creating financial freedom? So that's what's on the table right now. okay? And it's coming through. The company's doing its best to build what it needs to build, to get the momentum, to get the underwriting, to increase the gold reserves, to get the revenues coming in for the fees and everything else. And people have all sorts of opinions about that. But at the end of the day, as long as you're keeping pumping gold into your life and you're leveraging KBC as a result of that to accelerate that program, then you're going to be fine, because we'll be out there doing what we have to do. You know, we're basically in the slipstream of Howard Sykes and Joseph Heights. I'm very happy to sit in the slipstream of 2 billionaires. Thank you very much. And I'm even happier to have a stakeholdership inside the ecosystem that they're driving, because frankly, many people can't afford stakeholdership anymore in Apple and McDonald's and all the big banks. You missed that boat years ago. So you move into the Internet of Money. Okay, so the take home, guys, is if you want to get closer to the printer in the blockchain space, which is a huge step and advantage, I suggest, for many ordinary people who are long past being able to handle the red line. That's nearly 50 years of flatline compensation. There's no way you and I can keep up with that in the grand scheme of things, the average person. Fight all you want, but you've got to go in and start to look seriously at diversifying out, which is why you're listening to this call, which is why you're in Team 113 or in DBM Wealth or in any other of the groups you're listening to this. That's why you're here. You might be hearing a bit of FOMO and a bit of get rich quick and a bit of everybody else is doing it, I'll give it a punt, I'll give it a go. That might be in your head a little bit, which is probably why you're hodling your KBC so much and why you're moaning that you're not getting your 75 to 1. Because you came in thinking this would be an easy ride. And somebody led you to believe that, by the way. So go and speak to them. But it still means that you're vested and you're involved. So now you're involved, go and do something about it. And if you understand what the multi-packs represent, you'll understand that that's a step on the stones across the river for the company. It's trying to encourage people to understand what it is to have more machines in their factory. Like I say, you can sit and hold your factory, the land, the building, and sit on that forever on your balance sheet, and it'll appreciate in value over time, just like gold does. Gold is your factory. But without machines inside that factory doing things, and without you out there knocking on doors and telling people about your factory and helping people understand why they should come and get stuff from you, manifest itself in K1 impulse forms, for example, then your velocity isn't going to be as efficient, as effective as it could be. You're being given the gift of a business in a box without all the fear of running that bloody factory. Actually, no overheads, no staff problems, no legal issues, no people coming at you left, right, and centre, no phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning because somebody's broken in. This is why I get so passionate about it, because I understand what it is to build factories. It's not for everybody. In fact, it's damn difficult. But with this, it's a walk in the park, relatively speaking, because you've got to gain access to everything in one box. And all you've got to do is understand how to diversify and make those machines get to work, pump, pump, pump every single day, and be out there making sure other people understand that they can build their own factory too. And I mean it. If people in 2113 and DBM don't understand that, or don't want to understand it, then you're no use to us. Because there's billions of people on this planet who are absolutely under the cosh when it comes to compensation against productivity. And there's billions of people still to understand that they don't have to put up with that anymore. So if you're sat with first world problems, moaning that you can't get hold of your 75 to 1, for example, then you need to grow up. You know, all these things are in our hands to build. If we build the little factories, we build the communities, we build the infrastructure, along with what Karatbars is giving us, all that manifests automatically. It's the nature of it. Okay, so the take home, guys, is If you understand the core of your problem why you've got more than money, you will be always motivated to understand why you need to do something about it. If you don't understand that education piece, we've spoken for years, it's three things: education, vehicle, security. Education, vehicle, security. So many people come into this Karatbars project straight on the vehicle without having any education about why they've done it. And they certainly don't have enough education about security, by the way. If you want to create wealth, as I say, it's not about how much you make, it's how much you keep. And a big part of that in the blockchain space is security. If you've not taken the time to go and understand what it is to protect yourself, then you deserve to be ripped off. There's no banks, no governments who are telling you they're going to support you. Yes, we want regulation, legislation, of course we do. The blockchain space is desperate for it. We need to be able to turn to people if things don't go right in the infrastructure. Look at IOTA today. It's had to pull its horns back because people aren't operating properly inside the system and scammers are getting involved. That's the world, guys. That's the nature of the world. So you need to understand these things, and then that understanding gives you massive momentum, I promise you. It gives you so much more posture. It gives you the ability to talk real to people rather than just selling it as some network that might make them a few dollars. You know, you don't want to be chasing money. You want to be giving people a real reason to be moving off that red line. A vehicle on which they're able to move off the red line. So go to, that's the website. I only found this week. It's a cracking little website. Go to WTFhappened-in-1971.com and just study it. Then go and listen to Lynette Zhang. Go and listen to Mike Maloney. Go and listen to Jim Rickards. Won't take you long. Get your arms around why you're here. Yeah, and you're here because of this red line. You need more money. But more money doesn't just drop to you because you've suddenly signed up and bought a few KBC. You've got to understand what it is to re-leverage, and you keep leverage. If the closer you are to the printer, you couldn't be closer if you're on KBC. You are the printer because you're creating the momentum in the asset, especially this early on. So you become your own bank. That's a big deal. And it means you don't have to be out there cap in hand. You don't have to be waiting for the world, which won't happen in our lifetime, guys, I can tell you that. You don't have to wait for the world to adjust back to something that creates this parity again here, as it was for decades and decades before. Don't wait for the world. Don't rely on your pension, in my humble opinion. Go and do something about it. Buying gold as a first premise? Great, fantastic. Congratulations, you've got yourself a factory. If you're going to choose to get involved and put machines in those factories called KBC, that's fine too. But again, with all this going on, don't just sit with that one machine chupping away and it's only doing half the product. You've got to fill your factory full of these little machines. And that's what the multi-packs do. Moreover, which is maybe an extension to the analogy I've just thought of, moreover, when you run a factory, you've got machines and you've got product going out the door, but there's no point stacking your warehouse full of product because it's not being sold. You've got to have sales teams out there putting those products into companies' hands and customers' hands. In this particular example, when you own a dual system and you own access to a unilevel, in other words, you're accumulating gold and getting paid as such, and then you're accumulating package sales because of dual system, you're doing that as you're on your own. It's like you're coming in the morning, turning the machines on, running all the products, filling the warehouse, and then getting in your car and delivering all the products to your customers and doing the selling. When you've got access to multi-packs, because of the residual nature of the matching bonus, you've self-ordained yourself with a sales team. Obviously, you've got to build it and recruit them and interview them and bring them to your business. Look at it like that. You're interviewing good people. You want good people in your business, not every Tom, Dick and Harry who wants to get rich quick and moans at you because they can't work out bloody 2FA. You want people who are actually able to help you run your business. That's like recruiting sales reps. better your sales reps, the more products you're going to sell. The more products you sell, the more revenue comes into your factory. The more revenue you got in your factory, the more machines you can buy. The more machines you've got, the bigger your factory can become. So this is what this is an ecosystem. It's not a pension scheme. It's a business, and you've got to fill it with as many machines as you can and people, and that's what multi-packs are. They allow you to fill your factory full of machines and get people in your business to go out there and drive it, and that manifests itself in matching bonus down to 7 levels. All right, so I just thought I'd get it off my chest, guys, because there's still some confusion out there. We're doing our very, very best. Not only every single day do we push this very hard and show people why they've got more month than money. Just go into this chart and it absolutely shows you. You've got to get closer to the printer, guys. If you're really struggling in life, you're not close enough to the printer. Okay, in that sense, you're reliant on a boss. You're totally reliant on a government. You know, I keep that infrastructure there. Don't get me wrong. My mantra is don't be 100% reliant. 100% reliant on bosses, banks, and governments. Of course, we've got to be out there helping people in society. We need nurses and bin men and firemen and teachers. Of course we do. But nobody said any of those people had to be 100% reliant on the system. So financial education moves you away from that. But it's no good being educated if you haven't got a vehicle. So Karatbars is the vehicle. That's one of them. And you can move into then a place where you are the printer. That's what the blockchain is. And you'll see much, much more of that happening. But the reason Bitcoin, for example, has not struggled, but the reason it's volatile is because people get that they want it. You know, you've got the anarchists, you've got the conspiracists, you've got the people who want everything to suddenly change. You've got to be careful what you wish for, guys. But in the end of the day, the reason Bitcoin's volatile is because it hasn't got a utility. And neither have most of the top 20 coins, by the way. The reason I'm so vested in this project is because it is creating its utility. It gives me machines to put in the factory. Again, the analogy is if you had all your machines outside in a field without the support of an infrastructure, in other words, gold, how long are they going to last? That's why the fiat system's collapsed, because it's been put outside the factory. It's been put outside the standard. That's what that chart is. All right, so I appreciate your time, guys. Hopefully that was useful. This is a prelude video I'll put across the channels, and it's inviting you to the strategy calls. They are live calls. They're invite only. And I basically break down on the, you know, I'm assuming you're coming into these calls understanding what this website is showing you. I assume that you already understand your responsibility in creating your business and not waiting for other people to build it for you. If you're waiting for other people, just stay on the left side of the quadrant. Just stay employed. But if you want to get involved and make sure that you're taking control, then move right, build a business system, create money working for you. That's exactly what Karatbars does in one box. And you can go ahead. And if you're serious about that, you've got my help always. And that's what the strategy calls are about. We help you understand how to plug everything together to create a factory full of machines. Leverage. Don't just sit on your factory hoping it grows up in value. Don't just sit on KBC hoping that one machine is going to be magically a money printer. It won't be. It's got to be born and got to be put into a place where it's creating value. So you may as well get all your machines in place at this stage so you can maximize the efficiency of your factory and give yourself financial choice through 2020. That's the point, okay? So understand that and you'll do very, very well. Keep fighting it and moaning, you won't. Appreciate your time, guys. Any questions, get them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them over time. And I'll see you on the next video.